The gang is back together, and we've got 1 week until opening day for the Padres. How are we feeling about the club? Some big questions, certainly. Some injury concerns in the rotation. See how Tatis, Machado, and company look as they get back into the flow of things after an emotional, exciting stay in the WBC. And they're actually in action as we speak right now against the White Sox. Michael King just gave up another homer. Tough spring for Michael King. We'll get into that. Manny was up with 2 outs, bases loaded, popped out to end the threat. They were leading 6-4. It is now 6-5 against the White Sox. So there is your Cactus League update. Much to discuss on the Padres. A hot day in Peoria. They had the ice cream truck and everything. Craig Stammen, maybe just trying to keep the guys excited, motivated, spirits high. Very much in the dog days. Hot times in Arizona, week to go until opening day. Keep everybody excited, invest in the process, ready to go as they wind things down there. And very excited to catch up with Ryan Phillips of Sports Illustrated. He was on a few weeks ago. Back again to kind of get his thoughts, his pulse of the Padres as opening day fast approaches. Appreciate OGs, the sponsor of the On Friar podcast. Thanks to OGs and all they do for the podcast and the NBC7 sports team. If you need a place to catch the NCAA tournament, was that another home run? Michael King just gave up another home run. Wow. If you need a place to catch Cactus League games, whatever Cactus League games are left, NCAA tournament, NBA, NHL, whatever your sport of choice, hit up OG's, one of their many locations around San Diego County. Tons of TVs, awesome menu, great beer list. So shout out to OG's. Appreciate all they do for On Friar. Without further ado, the walk-up music. It's the On Fire podcast brought to you by NBC7. I am Darnay Tripp. Derek with some much deserved time off this week, so he is not with us. Pleased to have Ryan Phillips back on the pod once again. Ryan, I know, hey, busy day for you. All of us a little bit distracted. I spent my afternoon at Viejas Arena and scrambled back to the station, listened to Fernando Tatis Jr. and Manny Machado talk about being back, turned on this game, Michael King getting shelled. Lots going on right now. How's everything in your world?
Good. I mean, I feel like the World Baseball Classic has become my personality over the last 2 weeks. So I'm trying to like return to normal. And then we got basketball all of a sudden. So it has been a lot, but excited for the season to kick off. I mean, this is my favorite time of year. It's not just opening day for baseball. It's the tournament. It's the build up to the NFL draft, which I think every football fan gets excited about because they all think their team's going to have the greatest draft. And there's just hope everywhere across sports about to get the NBA playoffs. So all of those things at once is just, it's crazy for us covering things, but it's fantastic as a sports fan. So very excited to spend the entire weekend on my couch watching basketball and then occasionally taking notes for baseball to start next week.
Yeah, that is the right way to do it. And yeah, forgive me if my mind is a little bit scrambled today because it's been that type of afternoon. Little bit of Viejas, had to do some SDFC stuff. Now talking baseball with you and excited to do so. And while kind of keeping an eye on this game against the White Sox, something about like Cactus League games under the lights, whole teams back together. It's like, okay, we're almost back.
Dress rehearsal. Yeah. I mean, and you mentioned, Michael King giving up runs. If there are two guys, I'm not really worried about what their Cactus League stats are. It's Pivetta and King. I just feel like their stuff is not going to play well in the desert and just kind of, I feel like balls have been flying at spring training this year, by the way, too. So I mean, I don't know if it's the elevated heat or what, but I do feel like a lot of these home runs we're seeing both from the Padres and given up by the Padres are going to come back down to earth once we get to Petco. So not super concerned about anything we're seeing, but definitely a lot of questions for the Padres moving into the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, Michael King is, we were going to get into him. Might as well launch into that because, again, as we're kind of tracking this game and obviously we'll eventually get into the larger conversation about the rotation. But that's certainly, you mentioned King and Pivetta with Joe Musgrove starting on the IL. and there are already questions about the last spot or two in the rotation. Those are magnified now with Joe having to make a kind of gradual return and having to slow things down a little bit after that start that he had. The pressure is on these guys, Michael King and Nick Pivetta, and it has not been a strong spring for Michael King. 11.7 ERA at this point now. 5 homers allowed. If I'm not, I don't know if my math is right there. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it might be 8 now, if I'm not mistaken. Looking at his game log, I don't know if this is completely up to date, but
what
not
homers in
the
games is bad. Just for those people out there who haven't.
yeah. I gave up
attention.
back-to-back against the A's last time out, 3 total and 3 tonight, if my math is correct. And, going back to that game against the A's, like the stuff didn't his offerings are so squirrely and all over the place and so much movement and so fun to watch, and they just seem flat. And maybe you mentioned kind of the atmosphere, like maybe that has something to do with it, the environment. I'm sure somebody smarter than me could look at his baseball savant page and say, hey, spin numbers are down, or horizontal movement is down, and it looks like it is a little bit, significantly so, I don't know. But when there are so many questions about the rotation, and one of the guys that you're like, oh, we need Michael King to be Michael King, and that has not been the case, forgive me if I am a little bit concerned.
Yeah, and look, I mean, it's easy to forget. You signed him to a big contract. He barely pitched last year, and his first year, for the first couple weeks of the season, he was a homer, just giving up homers left and right. I mean, that was like his thing, and he did settle in, obviously, and became really the ace of that staff. But and culminating with the playoffs where he was unbelievable. I do think that there is a little bit to not pitching a whole lot last year, getting back into that groove and being there and feeling healthy and having to sort of put it all back together. I'm sure he, there was some stuff in the offseason to get him ready for that. But we'll see, when the lights turn on, how it goes. I know a lot of guys who are veterans don't take spring training numbers seriously. They're more working on things like, can I locate this pitch? Can I get this to where? How's my velocity? Can I build this up over time? You've seen Jeremiah Estrada, for example. I know he's not, a veteran like King in the way that King is, but his velocity was way down to start camp. And then he's all of a sudden right back where he needs to be. And it was probably just building up a little bit, getting, knocking the rust off, getting back there. I think with a lot of these veteran guys, especially pitchers, they're working on things versus really trying to get outs and trying to mow down lineups. Now, they'd love to just go right through lineups and have it be easy. But I do think, you'll see guys, again, they go to like a minor league rehab start, give up 7 runs, and then come up to the majors and throw like, have 2-run outing, giving up a couple hits. It really is more practice, especially for the pitchers, than it is for, say, the hitters who are really trying to get up to speed with velocity and all of that stuff. So the numbers don't matter, but you would like to feel better 1 week out from spring training about the way things are lining up for the Padres and their rotation right now.
I'm going to chalk up King's bad start due to 104 degrees on the field. So you could understand.
He is a guy who tends to sweat too. So I don't know if that's affecting him a lot.
That's true. That's true. You mentioned Pivetta as well, and only 3 appearances so far. That long break from March 3rd to March 14th, his last time out, hasn't gone more than 3 innings yet. Do we know if he's pitching tomorrow or
I haven't seen the schedule
Saturday? I would imagine one of those 2 days, I would think, and then that would have him on track for potentially opening day. He seemed
he got hit with a little arm fatigue, and it's pretty typical in spring training sometimes for guys to have that. Better to have that early than hit it mid-season. So we'll see if he's built up enough to. I mean, they may carry a lot of relievers to start the season, and go with a 4. They have a lot of off days early. They may go with a 4-man rotation and just have got if he's got to go 4 innings in the start, get backed up by that bullpen, fine, just get through it and build up. But it's a different year this year too with WBC. Some guys are off. I mean, we'll see how it lines up for everyone across the league.
Yeah, I was just looking at the UT, Kevin Acee and Jeff Sanders. And this is from a few days ago, March 14th. So yeah, 5 days ago. This is after his start. I believe it was against the Guardians. Yeah, yet to mention opening day starter, but Stammen could be in line for one more Cactus League start in 5 to 6 days, which would give him 5 or 6 days of rest ahead of the March 26th opener against the Tigers. And Pivetta, like when he had the arm fatigue, he was pretty adamant that this isn't going to be a thing once the season rolls around. Knowing Pavetta, I mean, he's a very competitive kind of
Yeah.
all business type guy. And so he is not the type that would want to add any fuel to like concern or I mean, he is just very kind of cut and dry. Like, hey guys, don't worry about this. We're going to be fine. We'll see if he's right. Cause I think it'd also be in his personality to say that just to like quiet any concerns, but you don't ultimately know until another 5-10 days rolls around. We get close to March 26th and we see whether or not he is the guy we expect him to be.
Yeah, Nick Pivetta is not going to beg out of a start for any reason,
No.
and it's going to be very hard to get him off the mound once you have him on it. So, yeah, I think that again, normal, kind of rust and sort of bumps in the road that you go through in spring training. I don't think it's anything to worry about.
How much you set off alarms just for the rotation as a whole? You mentioned, having to rely on the bullpen once the season starts. We saw that through stretches last year. Like the relievers get tired too, and so you don't want that to become too much of an issue early on. And then also, what arms do they use? I mean, Kyle Hart, other guys. You don't have Brian Hoeing this year. Kind of those long reliever types. Do we see more of those guys? But that's, I think, the clear kind of question storyline 1 week out from opening day is like the status of the rotation, the level of concern for the rotation, and then the domino effect with that bullpen.
Yeah, and I think that you were thinking, Randy Vasquez's stuff has played up this spring, and again, he led to questions of are the guns juiced in Arizona? And some people are still asking that question, but his stuff has looked much better. And I thought he pitched really well last year, but I thought he pitched above his stuff last year a little bit. I thought that he sort of was fighting through stuff and did really well and better than expected, but the stuff really was dictating that he maybe should have been doing a little worse. His stuff has played up a little bit this spring. Credit Ruben Niebel and the staff for working with him on it. But you looked at him, you're like, hey, if he's our fourth starter, that's not too bad. Well, with Joe Musgrove out now, he might be your third for now. And it's like, okay, well, how does that line up? Is he good enough to be that? And then who slots in behind that? And so I think Walker Buehler with his last outing probably has a rotation spot locked down. The question is, who do you go after that? And what order do you put him in? And, do you give German Marquez, who has struggled this spring, a shot and struggled really mightily last year? Do you give him that last spot and a chance to prove himself until Musgrove's back? So, and who knows what we get from Musgrove this year? Having Tommy John surgery at his age is not a guaranteed you're going to be back to who you were. So, not to set off alarm bells, I don't know anything about that, specifically his case, but he wouldn't be the first guy that struggled to come back from that at his age. So really, those are the question marks. And look, I look at the Padres and I think on paper, they are probably the second best team in the National League West, but that's if they are delivered as is. How do all of these things change it moving forward? And does AJ Preller go out and try and swing a deal to get another starter if he is not confident in Musgrove returning?
Like, what does the timeline for Joe even look like at this point? He has one appearance and then they're having to shut him down is probably too strong a word, but like, hit the
Definitely
brakes.
Pull him back. Yeah.
Rein him in. And, shortly thereafter we find out, okay, IL to start the season. And, you're having to reset a little bit and build him back up, and they're wanting to obviously build him back up responsibly. And so are we talking a couple weeks? Do we see him in April? I mean, again, just speculation here. But given that we've already run into a bit of a hitch, and not saying this is going to be an issue all year, but just in terms of having the right runway for Joe, because I think that's been a problem in the past, and he's admitted that himself. When was it? 23 when he hurt his foot and then made that throw in a minor league game and landed on his shoulder and then was having to kind of rush his way back. And then there are, elbow things, and he admitted like probably pushed it, a little bit too fast. And I think that's in Joe's nature, very competitive, wants to be out there. But they can't do that with a situation like this. And so you wonder just how long they're going to have to kind of piece it together. I do think I feel good. Again, you mentioned like if they have all the pieces that we expect them to have, like I feel pretty good about the rotation, with King, Pavetta, what we saw from Randy Vasquez and what we've seen from him this spring. And I'm pretty optimistic about Walker Buehler. Like that could be a pretty stellar 1 through 5, but how often are you seeing those guys in succession, like copy and paste week after week?
Yeah, and I mean, and Buehler was coming back from injury last year, but there were stretches where he was awful last year, and then turned it up and was pretty good, and then awful, and then good. Again, coming off of a basically a couple of years where he was injured and came back and pitched in the playoffs for the Dodgers, pretty well, and then was a free agent and with the Boston and Philly. You don't really know what you're going to get from him, but you hope far enough away from that injury, you can at least get consistency, whatever it is, consistently. That guy's not going to throw 99 anymore, but can you get him maybe a tick faster on the fastball when you get back to Petco and get him in his groove and built up? How is the secondary stuff going to look? All of that. Can you get, you're not going to get classic all-star Walker Buehler, but how much can you get out of him? And can he stay healthy? And so, again, there are these question marks after the top 2 that I think we were hoping there would be question marks after the top 3. And with Randy Vasquez, it's not, can he pitch at the major league level? What, you feel he could pitch a full season as a starter. Is he good enough to be a number 3? And maybe he is. Maybe that stuff ticking up has moved him into that level. I think everyone would be surprised if he is a good number 3 and not like okay, fine, he can be a number 3. But I will say at this point of the spring compared to last year, I feel better about the offense. I feel better about the lineup than I certainly did last year. And so maybe that balances out your question marks with pitching as you head into the season.
Yeah. You mentioned Buehler and Marquez. Marquez really, encouraging performance. What was that, Tuesday against the Mariners? Gave up 3 runs, couple homers, but 9 strikeouts over 5 innings. And Craig Stammen seemed very pleased with what he saw. So it feels like they're probably begging German Marquez to win one of those spots. And that was
please make this easy on us.
Yes. That was a big step in that direction. And then Walker Buehler's last time out as well against the Giants, 5 innings, scoreless, 3 hits, couple walks, 7 strikeouts. I mean, sign me up for Walker Buehler, Seth Lugo era. I'm here for it. He's thrown like 7 different pitches, 92, 93 with the 4-seamer, and he seems very comfortable with like the new style of pitcher that he has had to become, and the work that he's done with Ruben Niebla to figure out that mix and then to deploy it effectively.
In like a 2-year span, he goes from young phenom to savvy veteran. Just going right out with a completely different style of pitching. But hey, if it works for him, I'm here for it.
Yeah, and they've, again, they've had success with those types of guys. I think they found, again, Michael Wacha is a guy, and he was starting to figure it out, I think, with Boston, if I'm not mistaken, kind of the half year before he came here and had a really good 2023 season. And so hopefully that's where we're at with Buehler. Yeah, Pavetta, King, Strandy, Buehler, and Marquez. That like feels like what we're gonna have going into the season. And relievers, be ready.
Yeah. I mean, they've got like 12. They've got like 12 guys who could probably pitch the 8th inning. So it feels like so. They should be fine in that respect, I think.
Yeah, you buying the early odds on Randy V for Padres MVP this season?
No, I don't. I think he'll be the MVP in some people's hearts, but I don't think he'll actually get the nod.
Well, you probably would not have guessed Adrian Morejon last year, but
that's true.
There's a case to be made.
I mean, and they're like, to credit that guy, I mean, everything he's been through since he was signed by the Padres to turn into the guy he has. I mean, I thought, look, I know they made the Mason Miller trade. If you follow me on Twitter, you know my feelings about that. I love watching Mason Miller pitch, but I'm not sure they should have done that. I would have been completely fine heading into this year with Adrian Morejon as your closer. I thought if they didn't make him a closer, they should try and move into the rotation, given the holes there. And that guy, I mean, again, so many ups and downs in his career, and he's become a top, 5 or 6 reliever in baseball. And relievers I know are very year to year, and so banking on the exact same years you got last year with anybody is, you're probably going to be upset if you do that. But just this stuff is fantastic, and he just is unfazed out there. I love watching that guy pitch.
Yeah, for sure. All right, as Bob Scanlon's talking to Manny Machado, let's transition to the WBC guys coming back. Manny and Tatis spoke with reporters today. Mason Miller back as well, fresh off the WBC. How'd you feel about the way things ended there for Team USA? There was a lot of talk about Mason Miller that ended up being kind of the big storyline, with DeRosa saying, hey, I had to honor the Padres' wishes. I was only going to use him in a safe situation. Harper tied it up, but Aaron Judge unable to give them the lead going into the top of the ninth. If that were the case, we probably see Mason Miller. And Kevin Acee had a piece today and spoke to Mason, and he said he didn't think that there was going to be a chance, period, because they didn't want to do 3 appearances in 5 days. He had pitched in the quarterfinals and the semis against, closed out that win against the Dominican Republic. And then, found out that there was some leeway there, but seemed to know going into it that he's probably not going to pitch in the championship game, which had to be a tough pill to swallow. But you can understand it from the Padres standpoint, I think.
I thought it was very generous of the Padres to give him the option to use him to close it. Honestly, given the restrictions everybody's had on their players, and 3 games in 5 days would have been a lot. And look, the WBC is very compressed, and to have that, I mean, Venezuela played in the game and then played in the championship the next night with all of their relievers. A lot of their relievers having already pitched. So, Mark DeRosa, you could say like, well, I respect Mark DeRosa not throwing him out there. Well, he didn't have any choice. I mean, if you do that, you're blackballed from baseball, using a guy against his restrictions, which he was on his way to getting blackballed anyway with some of his decision making. But no, I respect it all the way around. The Padres said, look, we're not going to take the chance to close out the WBC away from Mason Miller. But if it's not that, then, he can't go. He already got you there. And I think that's fair. And Mason seemed to accept that. He didn't seem to be upset about it. I mean, the worry is you're upsetting your player for not letting him go out there and do something, but he seemed to be perfectly fine with it. So yeah, I think that, respect all the way around to everybody for understanding the situation and playing to it. Tournament as a whole, fantastic. I am fully on board. I think it's great. And I thought that I thought those last 3 games were some of the best baseball games we've seen in a long time. And it's great that they happen the way they happen at the time of year they happen, when people are usually casually paying attention to baseball, not really focused on it, and got a lot of eyes on the game, and think it was great for it. And I don't think they should move it. I think they should keep it right where it is.
That's my next question.
Yeah, I think they should keep it. I think mid-season, if you have it at the All-Star break or something, guys are going to want a vacation at that point. They're going to opt out. They're not going to do it. And I think that also mid-season, if you've got a team in a pennant chase, they're not going to risk their players. And I think early season, everybody's building up. Everybody's kind of getting into the groove. And maybe, you saw it with Team USA's hitters. I don't think if you put that lineup together in June or July, they struggle the way they did. But everybody else is in the same boat. And so I think I really like it when it is. I think if it's postseason, same thing. Guys are going to want their vacation. They're going to want to go home. They're going to want to, pitchers aren't going to want to add innings to their arms, all of that stuff, but they'd be pitching and playing anyway. They're just doing it for another outlet, basically. I think it's the right time to do it, and may not be perfect, but it's never going to be perfect.
It's really interesting. Also, what impact does it have on the All-Star game? And it's not every year; it's every few years. But I don't know where I saw this, or if this is even in consideration. But do you take a nod from soccer and have kind of some of the preliminary rounds, the group play, so to speak, this time of year, and then once you're in the quarterfinals, you're generally speaking in the United States, easier for travel. you're only playing, 3 nights worth of games. Maybe you can take a week off and do that in the middle of the season. You get some of those early. You're playing, you know, uh, Israel and some of these other teams that you don't necessarily expect. Canada expect to make a run. Maybe you do that this time of year. It's a little bit shorter. You miss less of spring training, and then those teams that advance to the quarterfinals and semifinals, then they come together for a week, a few days in the summer.
Maybe
And
in lieu of the All-Star game, you play them all at one stadium that would have hosted the All-Star game.
Or do it with the All-Star game. I mean, you have a slightly watered down All-Star game, but if I'm somebody who's not playing, if I'm somebody from a player from Canada and I'm not going to make it to the semifinals of the championship, but I have a chance to make the All-Star game, I still want to play in the All-Star game and be considered an All-Star. So I don't know if there's a way to do both, but I think that's a good thought. Like, do you do it all on one site for however many days, and it's just this like week-long baseball extravaganza? You got maybe have the home run derby between like the semifinals and the championship and All-Star. I don't know how it would
basically
work.
college World Series put them all up in dorms and
yes.
No,
and you're gonna need to build in some days. I mean, because those guys need some rest. But I think for the players that aren't participating, that you do, instead of having Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, like 3 days off, you get potentially a full week off to kind of rest and reset for the home stretch. And maybe I'm just thinking about the 2025 Padres, who are clearly fatigued from like June on. I feel like some guys could probably use that.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to see if the teams would want that. Because this all comes back to teams releasing the players. I mean, that's the bottom line, and the insurance and all of that stuff. We saw insurance be a huge issue this year that we really hadn't seen it popped up before. I would be very interested to see if this is part of the new CBA negotiation and if the players want it that way, or if they prefer to do it all early. And if the teams are willing to release their guys midseason. I mean, you've seen it with hockey for the Olympics and things like that. You've seen that happen. And we're talking about 2028. Are they going to allow major league players to do baseball in Los Angeles? And the players, seems like a lot of them, Bryce Harper is leading that charge. They want to be able to play. So what does that look like? That's 2 weeks. Do they get those 2 weweeks off to go do this, or do the teams are we going to basically have replacement players for 2 weeks? We've done this before. How'd that go over? I mean, we'll see what this becomes, but I do think this whole thing and the Olympics thrown into it will be part of a discussion. Also, I would not be shocked if the World Baseball Classic decides to go every other year, with how popular it's become. They had to skip it in 2020, but 2017 did a great job of really modernizing it. They changed the format around, made it a little bit better. 2023, perfect format, just group play, then knockout rounds. They used to do like 2 group plays, and then the top teams from those groups go on, and it was odd. And now it's the right format. It's the right length of time. People are into it. And I thought this one built on, I didn't think anything would top Ohtani getting Judge out to end 2023. I thought this year's tournament was far better. There's far more competition. The teams are better. Guys are more into it. And so I wouldn't be surprised if the WBC tries to capitalize on that and maybe says, hey, why don't we do this again in maybe not the Olympic year, 2028, we'll go 2029, but then after that, maybe go every 2 years.
Yeah. It's interesting. And again, the players, I mean, it seems to really resonate with them. It seems to mean a lot with them. And you even have conversations about like WBC or World Series, and the fact that is even a discussion, like even if you think, okay, that's crazy, the fact that it's even a topic and some of these players are like, having to think about it, I think is saying something. It's a credit to the tournament. And so, it's going to be interesting to see how that evolves. Are you bummed out you didn't get Mason Miller against Fernando Tatis Jr.?
I thought it would have been fun. Yeah. I mean, it would have been a diet version of Ohtani versus Trout, I guess, not in the finals, maybe not as big a deal, but, it would have been fun, I think. And I think both guys would have embraced it, just given their personalities. I think Fernando would have smiled a little coming up to the plate, getting to face, having to face this guy. But, yeah, I think it would have been great. I think it would have been great for the game to have the guy who was one of the hottest hitters in the tournament face the guy who has been unhittable since August last year, and would have been a great way. I thought the way that game ended sucked. It was a close pitch, but it was a ball, and I would expect them to go with ABS next time in the knockout rounds. But at
Felt a
least
little bit like Xander Bogaerts at Wrigley last year,
yeah,
that pitch.
same exact feeling, and especially because it's something that we know can be corrected, that can be defeated. And so, I honestly, I really respected the Dominican team saying like, hey, it wasn't one pitch that lost us the game, and not you're saying like, yeah, it was low, but we're not going to complain about it. I really respected that because they could have just hung on to that tightly. But yeah, I would have loved to see that actually at the end, for a little bit of team wide bragging rights.
I'm good at Freddie Fermin at ABS challenges, by the way. Have you seen
I
some of
mean,
these?
some of these guys, this is going to be a skill. Framing was a skill for so long, and
Mm,
that's probably kind of. I think framing is still going to be a thing because you can't challenge every pitch, so they
right,
can
yeah.
still fool the ump and they can fool the hitter. That's an underrated part of framing is fooling the hitter. And I think this is going to be a skill like framing's a skill. Just knowing your
Mhm.
strike zone so well, knowing where the pitch is coming from, where it crossed the plate, not where you caught it, all of that stuff. It's going to be a huge skill for hitters and catchers. And I do think it's going to be fun to have that as a catcher stat. Maybe add it to the war. How many challenges you get? You nailed your percentage.
I love it. I love it. I'm excited for opening day. Somebody facing Scooble, and there's something just on the board. If it's Manny, and he's fired up in the fourth inning and does one of these, and whether it goes his way or not, I mean, just the potential for content and things for us to talk about is immense.
I mean, tennis fans have loved it for years. They get into it,
It's
they
incredible.
clap during it.
I
It's
love it.
it's going to be great. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm very, very excited about that. There wasn't much that jumped out. Mason Miller talking about that situation. Manny spoke with reporters, nothing really earth shattering from Manny. But Tatis, I think he had a cool line. He was asked, because I think this is one of the things that we've been wondering about is like, how do you deal with the emotional peak of WBC to coming back to Peoria and then getting yourself going for game one of 162? And he was asked like, what's your plan, what's your approach, like what do you plan on doing? He's like, bring the same energy I was bringing during the WBC. And I was like, there it is. That's what we need you to do. Now he even kind of acknowledged like season's a marathon, that's hard to do,
Yeah,
but
WBC is
he's
a
at least
sprint for sure. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. And it's easy to understand why you'd be full of adrenaline and so excitable and the emotion and the passion. Um, it's just in the environment in a way that it is not in Peoria, Arizona, and the way it will be on opening day, but it might not be the following Tuesday or Wednesday. There are the ebbs and flows of it, but I think just him saying like, this is my approach, this is what I plan on doing. I just thought that was a good answer, and that's what they need. That's what they need from him, is kind of the emotional heartbeat of the team that was missing for stretches of last year. And hopefully he's able to kind of keep that up, because he did do it to start last season, then he got plunked against Pittsburgh and for whatever reason just wasn't the same guy. But they need him to be as consistent with that as possible during the season, and it seems like he's going into it with kind of the right approach. He was very like, high spirits, very cheery today. He
Yeah.
didn't come across like a guy who's like, I'm here and I got to do this. I had the best time of my life and now I'm back in Peoria, Arizona. Like, he seemed happy to be there and kind of now get ready for this phase of the year.
Well, he got orange sickle ice cream, which would cheer anybody up. But
It's true.
I think it's one of the most underrated flavors. But no, I think that you saw him in that World Baseball Classic just loving it. And I mean, that whole Dominican team was, the vibe in that dugout was as good as I've ever seen in sports. I mean, they were just having a blast. And I think that it's those guys all getting to play together. I mean, I'm sure the Soto thing brought back some memories, maybe at the beginning, maybe a little bad, but ended, they seem to all just be super into it. And I just think it is something that can galvanize a player and really lock him in. I mean, Luis Ariz is a completely different guy than he's been in the past in that tournament. He's hitting for power. He's crushing balls. He's, giving the energy he always gives, but to a different level. He's batting third for the championship team. I mean, so I do think it's a way for guys to really actually, sort of energize themselves. And again, you're right. The letdown of going to, a 2/3 empty Peoria for the next couple of days because it's over 100 outside and people don't want to be there is a change. But I think Fernando needed that. I think he was on the all tournament team. He was amazing the whole time. I think that could be really a catapult for him into a really good season. And you're right. Last year he started well. Looked like, oh, is this the year he's the MVP? And he got hit and struggled with that, and just seemed to sap him of his power for a while. And I just think that a guy like him, Manny's usually a slow starter. I thought he played really well in the WBC. I mean, his defense was unbelievable, but I think that he had some really good at bats. I think those things can really carry guys, and so it also probably bonded them even closer. And Manny talked about today about Tatis being there, and how happy he was to see that and all of that. And so yeah, I do think these are things that can really lift guys and maybe give them a boost heading into the season, because it also builds your confidence early that you were playing really well in some games that really meant something.
Yeah, and one thing, I mean, Tatis kind of talked about, just like, or maybe he's just asked about, like, the excitement for his teammates, and you saw so much of that with Team DR. It's like guys seemed as excited to watch somebody, Junior Caminero, hit a nuke, as they were to do so themselves, which is always cool. And I think we saw that in 2024. And I do think that's something that we could see with this team. Obviously, with like Tatis, Manny, Merrill, Gavin Sheets coming on the way he did last year, Nick Castellanos. Like, I think if those guys see Nick Castellanos, like, turn it on, and he's got a 20 to 25 home run season on Duhar. I think Laureano. I mean, there's so many guys that can contribute, and it would be nice to see kind of that 2024 vibe where, like, there's so much belief in each other up and down the lineup, and then so much confidence, and then so much excitement when those guys come through in big spots. Because, like, I think that's one of the things that's like jumped off the screen when this team is going well, is like there's a togetherness and an excitement for one another.
Yeah, and honestly, I've said this to some people. I'm not sure I said it on here, but one of the things that team was missing last year, and they got to the playoffs and had a chance against the Cubs and all of that, and had a chance to get out of that first round. But the thing they were missing, and this is loaded to say this now, they were missing Jurickson Profar and Ha-seong Kim, and some of those personalities that really like kept guys loose and lifted, and guys who were really, and not saying the other guys weren't into it for their teammates, but those guys were pure joy when things were going well. And I think they were, and hype men. I think they kind of missed that last year a little bit. And I think that, Merrill can do that, but he struggled a lot last year. He was out. He was really down on his own performance. And I think that held him back a little from being more, sort of effusive with everything. I think he's a huge key for this team this year. I think he might be the key that unlocks things offensively for them in the middle of that lineup, and getting back to the guy that we know he can be, and that he knows he can be, quite frankly, and seeing him just get comfortable again, I think is really the key to driving this offense to where it can go.
Somebody was going to give you $42 million, and all you had to do at worst was suck at baseball for 3 years. Even if you were bad, you just had to suck at baseball for 3 years and collect $42 million.
I know. And he's still got a year and I think it's about 15 left with them. And I wonder what's going to happen there. Like, are they going to just, I mean, I guess they have to invite him to bring him back. You can't just eat 15 mil if you're the Braves. I mean, they're not the Dodgers. They can't just cut a guy for 15 mil. It's a shame, because Jurickson Profar is a guy I love watching play. I love that guy. Even last year when he came back from the suspension and he was playing, I was kind of like, it feels right that he's back playing baseball. Now it's like, he shouldn't have been. He should not have been playing baseball. It really is a shame, because he's a guy who's very likable, easy to root for. And when stuff like that happens, it's tough, man. I mean, it really is. Yeah.
Tatis tonight so far, a couple RBIs, a hit, run scored, 2 walks. RBI was off the bat at 104. He's got a 500 on base this Cactus League, and it was 368 I think last year to lead the team, and that was kind of the breakthrough, as we were like really looking between the lines to give Fernando Tatis Jr. a positive grade for 2025 when so much was missing that we expect from him. The way he went about his business as a leadoff hitter, like there was something there, and strikeouts down, walks up, and
because you take the Platinum Glove defense for granted now. It's all about finding that offense, and I will say the spring's been interesting. I mean, Gavin Sheets has 8 walks, 4 strikeouts. Not something I expected. He's being very selective. He's swinging a
Also homer
lot
tonight.
less. Yeah, I did see that. Cronenworth, 7 walks, 5 strikeouts. If that guy's selective the way he was when he first came up, has that good hand-eye coordination, all of that, that changes things for you. I mean, that guy, the problem that Jake runs into is his swing gets long and people challenge him with velocity, and he swings right through it. And if he can shorten up, if he can be more selective, again, another guy, he bumps up his on-base percentage by a few points. It's the difference between this team having a average to below average offense and having a top 10, top 8 offense. You have a top 8
Yeah.
offense with that bullpen and the front of that rotation, pretty damn good.
Yeah. Bogart's hitting 318 now with a 900 OPS, homered the other day. One thing I was going to say about Tatis, watching him in the WBC, obviously the results were great, but so much quieter at the plate after a year of like just trying stuff and like, a short stride, barely noticeable, no big leg kick. And I think it was the grand slam, really short and direct with that swing. I mean, it was like the barrel of the bat traveled like maybe 2 feet. Like it went nowhere, and then the ball went everywhere. And it's like, okay, I think I think when you watch that, you're like, yeah, this is I think what it looked like in 2021.
He's so strong. He doesn't need a long swing. I mean, he just is. He just needs to be quick to the ball. But yeah, he's a tinker. He's always been an in-season tinker with a swing, and sometimes you overdo it. And I think that he just was overdoing it last year a bit. And he's had other seasons like that. But you're right, when he's quieter, it just looks better. And it all seems to come together for him.
Yeah, well, it looked really good in the WBC. We talked about the lineup last time, and here we are, whole gang back together. Jake Cronenworth hitting leadoff, followed by Tatis, followed by Merrill, followed by Machado, then Sheets, Bogarts, and Duhar, Fermin, and then Laureano is your second leadoff guy, so to speak. He's got a 368 on base this season. On base isn't something I think he hit a little leadoff to start his career. Not necessarily been like a super strong suit of his, but if he's doing what he's doing this spring, that'll work well. But Cronenworth, like pretty even splits last year. He was just a tick below Fernando Tatis in on base. And, Stammen said they like what they've seen from him from that standpoint, particularly against righties. Although, again, he's shown that he can hit lefties. And so, I wonder how often we see this arrangement of guys. And then when they are facing lefties, what is the change? Is it Xander Bogaerts, who's got a 400 on base this year? And we saw him hitting out of that leadoff spot. Is it Tatis, who obviously, we've seen him do it. We saw him do it in the WBC, but I'm kind of excited about Jake potentially getting that opportunity, especially after a year where like I felt like he should have gotten a chance if Mike Schilt wasn't incredibly stubborn and just wouldn't change the script at any point in the season, despite what the results told him.
Yeah, no, I think that if Jake is seeing a lot of pitches and is being selective and is back to sort of the guy that sort of broke through with the Padres, where he was kind of a guy who was going to see a lot of pitches and be selective, go the other way, do those things, then yeah, I can see him being a leadoff hitter. It's just the question is sometimes he gets going bad and he loses what makes him successful. And so I'm down to give him that shot. 100%, because I think that the leadoff guy is in there. I mean, this is a team that does not have a leadoff hitter, like a classic guy who gets on base a ton, sees a lot of pitches, whatever, has the speed up top to, go get you an extra base and all those things, get in scoring position. They don't really have that guy on the lineup. And so you're going to have to kind of make things work. And that's fine. Plenty of teams don't have a pure leadoff hitter. They have a guy who fits that role and does that role for them. Can Jake be that? I mean, I think he and Bogarts both have some of the things you want from a leadoff hitter, if not all of them. And so maybe it is something where you switch them righty lefty. I don't know, but I definitely think I would be shocked if the lineup stays pretty similar all year long like we saw last year. I would be very surprised if that's the case. obviously barring injury and whatever, that's going to change it. But I do think this will be more of a, how are we going? Let's tinker with things here. Let's look at matchups. Let's do those things. And quite frankly, it should be that way. You shouldn't just throw guys out there based on feels. You should check what the data says and check, if this guy does, there's a lefty out there that Jake Cronenworth has never gotten on base against, he should not be leaning off against that guy.
Yeah.
You should set that up differently. And so I do think this will be more of a flexible situation than we saw last year.
Yeah, I wonder, if you go with two different arrangements based on lefty or righty, and Fernando Tatis Jr., for whatever reason, hasn't always been a lefty killer, and that's part of the reason why they went and got Miguel Andujar. But, if you are facing a righty and you go Crone, Tatis, Merrill, Machado, when you're facing a lefty, can you really switch it up and go Tatis, Merrill, Manny, maybe Manny's third instead of fourth, so that you make sure you see him the first time, the first inning, and then follow those three with a Sheets or a Bogarts, what have you. And that way you get like a little bit of Fernando Tatis Jr. with some RBI potential. Then you get a little bit of Fernando Tatis Jr. with like, this is the guy you got to face out of the gates. Good luck. And kind of put that scare. I don't know from a hitter standpoint, like if it's, too jumbled from one day to the next, but I do like the potential of having kind of a couple different arrangements, like you said, that will be flexible, that you'll change depending on how things are going throughout the season, but kind of putting guys in different roles depending on who you're seeing.
Yeah, and I'll tell you the one thing I do like, there's not a whole lot of lefty back to back. We haven't seen that at all this spring, and that was something that happened a lot last year.
That's 6, 7, 8 last year, and just killed them against the Cubs.
And it's just, after the first time that happens, you say, maybe we break this up a little bit. Maybe we just slide one guy in there. But nope, you just kept going with it, like keeping guys where they are. And you know what? These are professional athletes. They can adjust. I bet if you asked them, they'd say, sure, yeah, let's do that. But yeah, I do think this will be a more flexible situation. I think that inflexibility was part of the story last year with how things ended and why there's a new manager this year. So
the 30,000-foot view a week out from opening day on this team is what?
I think they're the second best team in the National League West. I think in my opinion, this is a playoff team. I think that, one or two things go wrong with, I think that a lot hinges on these guys playing. And again, with the question mark of Musgrove, the back end of the rotation, it's not necessarily that the players, the back end of the rotation, the pitchers, the back end of the rotation are bad. It's how reliable are they, given their recent track records, can they actually do it? And then the lineup, I definitely feel better than last year. I think Bogarts is in a better spot mentally. I think Laureano gives you the left fielder you were missing all last year. Gavin Sheets looks far better. At the catcher spot, Fermin is a much more solid option there than they had last year. Merrill, I think, will bounce back. How far does he reach the heights of his rookie year? I don't know. He's not going to surprise anybody like he did then. But I do think it'll be better than last year. So I think the bench is better. So I like the offense better. A lot of questions with the pitching staff. No questions with the bullpen. I think it'll be the best of baseball yet again. Injury, health is going to determine this team's season. But I feel pretty good that they're the team that comes in second in the National League West, and I think they'll be back in the playoffs.
I will say probably the line from Manny that stood out from his scrum today. He was asked about like his goals for the season and for himself and for the team. He said, just stay healthy, which, I think that's kind of the nail on the head. Like, it doesn't guarantee anything that you're going to be in the World Series to get back to the CS if you stay healthy, but it gives you a chance. Yeah, you have no opportunity. And last year, like, just a snake bit year for Merrill. You going through what he was going through. You didn't have Joe at all, and
Tatis. Dealing with getting hit and all that stuff.
Yeah. So, I think that was, a mature, thoughtful response from Manny, just knowing that that's often kind of the difference with some of these teams, especially a team like them that, like, I agree with you. I think it's a playoff team, but you could see if a couple things go poorly, if a couple guys deal with health concerns, how it could not be a playoff team. Nothing's guaranteed for them, but right. I think there is that potential for them to reach the highs of 2024, which when they were going and they were one win away from really doing something special. Like, I think something like that, like, You could see the potential there in this group, but things have to go right, and one of those things obviously is health.
Agreed. And I think, again, you say one thing goes wrong, this could derail the whole thing. If a couple things go right, it could elevate them even further, you know? And so they really are in that swing setting, but I think their baseline is good. And that's where you want to be at this point of the season. You never know what's going to happen, but that baseline, middle of the road where they're at, I think is a playoff team.
What you got cooking for SI?
I got top 50 prospects coming out on, I believe, Wednesday. And I hate to disappoint, but there's only one Padres prospect on the list.
Well, I'm maybe
there's
surprised
a couple
that there's even one.
There's a few Padres prospects on the list, very high, sadly. But no, I got Cruz Schoolcraft coming in at 49. I really like him. I got him higher than a lot of people.
In there.
I got him higher than a lot of people. He's just you know, if you guys haven't seen any videos of him pitching, go look him up. He's 6'8", really easy velocity, and it comes on guys even quicker because he's got like 7 feet of extension. I mean, it's insane. And the thing about him is, you know, he's that big and throws that hard, but his secondary pitches are arguably better than his fastball. His changeup is really good. His slider's getting better. Will be really fun to watch him this year. They've got him targeted for like 20 plus starts at Elsinore, potentially Fort Wayne. And I think he'll be a fun one if you ever have a chance to get up to Elsinore to go watch him.
And he'll get shipped off at the deadline for a starting pitcher.
We don't have to put that evil on him, Darnay, at this point. Let's hope that one day they're going to start developing some of these guys and bringing them up and have cheap players to fill out the roster, you know.
Go read the piece. Go get the scouting report on Cruz Schoolcraft, the future career San Diego Padre all-star starter.
Yeah, nailed it.
Ryan, always a pleasure. Thanks for doing it.
Thanks for having me, man.
Enjoy your opening day. Got any plans?
Seeing if I'm going to be, I might be at Petco, but I'm not 100% sure yet. We're still trying to figure that out, but I'll definitely be. We've been doing a lot of like, you know, live blogging stuff that has been so much fun to do. It's like old school 2010 internet, and I'm loving it. So go check those out on SI. It'll be on our front page. We'll just keep you updated on all the games around the league.
Always great work, and I hope to see you at Petco. If not, enjoy your opening day and look forward to catching up again, hopefully soon down the road.
All right. Thanks, man.